Wyatt Hendricks was given the Hodge Trophy, the greatest honor the sport of wrestling recognizes. And amazing how that's caught on. That was done by Win magazine. And Win had the right. They were the leading publication. They had the right and maybe even an obligation to bring an award for it, but they brought forward Hodge. And this was in the 90s, and I'm trying to think of what year. Gut just won that thing in 96, 95 and 96. And it was fairly new even when Les won it. Went to his house, I got to see the trophy. And the way that it caught on, though, and the way that it stuck around, and the prestige that goes with it, I think has even exceeded the expectation of Win. So, Wyatt wins it. And boy, his numbers sure were impressive. Now Hodge is not just an opinion. Hodge comes with a criteria. I don't know that that's right. I mean, I don't know as I look at this that it should be that way. We all know who the best guy is. We all know who did the best. And I feel like when you bring a criteria forward, sometimes you get in the way of that, and that's all you're trying to establish. So then you start talking about who the best is by pins or by major decisions or by technical falls, none of which have to do with the best. I strongly feel those should not be mentioned. If you have one guy that took on 30 men, none of which were All-Americans. You have another guy that took on 30 men, 12 of which were All-Americans. The strength of schedule would lead plenty of room to let you know this can't be done by the numbers, just for example. But I certainly don't disagree with Wyatt. That is what a wonderful job that he did. It'd be very hard looking back over history, and in the history of wrestling, there's only been 3 stories. It'd be very hard to look at any of those 3 and find out those guys weren't the O-Dub. To hear the story of Larry Owens beating Dan Gable, and then to find out that Larry wasn't the O-Dub would be weird. To hear the story of Pat Smith winning a 4th title, but then to find out that Pat didn't get O-Dub, that'd be weird. How is this the story that transcends time if it wasn't even the biggest story of the day? To find out that Chael Sonnen went undefeated, but then to find out that he was not given O-Dub? Wait a minute, you're telling me he's the greatest of all time? But I have another stat here saying he wasn't even the greatest today, of that day? It'd be weird. But when you look at the story, which would you rather have? Which would you rather have? Would you rather have the biggest upset in wrestling history? In a card placement on the worldwide leader of ESPN that happened to be last to showcase your opponent? Or can you compartmentalize that and realize it's just a tournament and see that Carter Starachi won 5, which had never been done and predictably will never be done again in our lifetimes. And if you were to go to those 2 athletes and just say, hey guys, got a magic wand here, which would you rather have? I can give you the biggest moment in NCAA history, or I give you 5 championships. Which door do you go through? And to go back and see what Wyatt did was really quite remarkable. Nobody was looking at him for a Hodge, and there'd be no reason to look at him. He wasn't going to beat Kirklevic, and he damn sure wasn't going to beat Gable. Wyatt, when he came over to the NCAA with the addition of Gable, Wyatt was not a lock for All-American. So it was only after he beat Gable that you begin to study the body of the year that he had, and his numbers were flat awesome. They were more than impressive. They were awesome. And you don't get to have that at heavyweight that often, but we have heavyweights right now. My goodness, heavyweight is stacked. And has been for the last 5 seasons. Been amazing. Absolutely remarkable. We have guys that don't win the tournament that go on and win world medals at senior championships, including the Olympic Games. It's really remarkable what we've got at heavyweight. Now, you really do have to understand, though, on this logic. Wyatt was not looked at for his season because he was not considered for Hodge. Hodge is exclusively considered for champions, even though that's not a criteria and no one has ever even been looked at that wasn't a champion, of which was not expected for Wyatt, in fact, not even twice removed. So you got this tournament, and then you got to start working everything backwards. But if you have stayed with me so far, then I have successfully proven to you that it came down to this tournament. And to that, you're going, oh yeah, of course it came down to this tournament. Wouldn't even look at it until the tournament. In fact, I wouldn't even look at it until the last match of the tournament. Okay, great. But now we're saying the same thing, that it's this tournament. Well, this tournament was already adjudicated. It was already adjudicated between the two. The battle of Wyatt and Carter already happened. The battle of Wyatt and Ridge and Carter. Battle of Wyatt, Messenbrink, who should be talked about more, and Stroche. It's already been happened in the form of OW, and OW was given to Carter. So if that's right, if that decision was right, it would be impossible for somebody else to win Hodge. Now, Hodge has a separate set of criteria. I'm just sharing for you, make no mistake. The Hodge committee is in direct conflict with the NCAA committee. I think they should do that publicly. Whoever is representing the NCAA committee needs to speak to whoever's at the Hodge committee. They need to talk about why they don't agree. Win Magazine needs to explain to the NCAA how you got it wrong, because they are, make no mistake, they are telling them you got it wrong. And Wyatt did such a good job. I'm in full support of Wyatt. I will tell you that I thought that Carter should have got Hodge, and I'll tell you now that Hamnady should have been considered for outstanding wrestler. But when Wyatt got done, as wonderful as he did, he went right back into his box. And that was the part about it that almost brought a tear to my eye, to watch wrestlers get put in these boxes. The moment Wyatt came off that stand and grabbed that flag, Wyatt's campaign for President of the United States should have began. But it didn't even cross his mind. He went over to the commander, then he's trying to figure out how he's going to get in this thing, and he's going to fly his airplanes around. And that is done by design. It must be that way. You cannot be NCAA champion. You cannot be a member of the Air Force. You're not going to do these things unless somebody can get a hold of you and get you in that box. But when you become the heavyweight champion that doesn't listen to people, takes out Kirk and beats Gable, it looks as though you have figured out the truth. And he popped right back into that box. And it was just one of those things. And I realize that he is not 35 years of age. And I realize that campaign is a while down the road. But to act as though Wyatt was just one of the boys, get an arm around him and get a photograph, not unless he's willing to be. He was the leader of the boys. He was the boss of bosses. He was the men amongst men. And I am being quite literal when I tell you, the second he came off the mat and he's got the worldwide leaders surrounding him with cameras and he's got the flag draped over and he just did the unthinkable, his campaign for the presidency should have began.